Hello everyone and welcome to Kevin Reads. We're going to try a little bit of a different format. I already recorded this once and it ended up 20 minutes long, so we're going to try and pick the pace up a little bit. So the book is Feed by M.T. Anderson, and the premise is basically what would it be like if we all had the internet implanted into our brain. Now, Feed has a very negative outlook on this, and it follows two characters. Titus, who has basically grown up with the feed all of his life and is pretty used to it, and Violet, who got the feed much later in life and is very concerned about sort of becoming identified by this chip in her head. Now, I'd like to say I recommend this book, but it gets really preachy. It's very much a philosophy book rather than a story-driven book. It starts off pretty slow, and Anderson borrows a technique from 1984 and sort of limiting the vocabulary of the characters to try and emphasize just how brain-dead they're becoming. It's also interspersed with examples of the ads that sort of flood through the characters' minds. Unfortunately, it was written in 2002, so it kind of more closely models the television means of interaction with advertisers and stuff. It's a lot less like the internet that we know today. Now, Feed really sacrifices plot in order to get its point across, so I wouldn't recommend it unless you've already read a long list of other dystopian novels. Now it's time for the quick review. Writing quality, deliberately obtrusive. Happiness index, neutral to sad. Cultural relevance, moderate but decreasing. Should I read it? No. Next week we're going to read a much more story-driven dystopian novel, Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Stay tuned for more thoughts on Feed after the break. Okay, so this book bugged me in a major way, so I have to give a few disclaimers. First off, we can't be upset with Mark Twain for using the N-word in Huckleberry Finn, because times were very different. In the same vein, we cannot be frustrated with M.T. Anderson's poor representation of the internet, because the internet has changed drastically over a period of just 10 years. At the same time, we can look at things like 1984 or Brave New World and see how that by addressing one single focused issue, they were able to create something that is, if not timeless, still very applicable right now. Second thing, and this is sort of related to it being a pretty early book, is that by this time we're really accustomed to hearing, oh, the internet is destroying our lives. So there's an extent to which we may not be as receptive when a book tries to tell us the same thing. And the third item, one of the things I dislike about the book is the very non-compelling plot. But at the same time, I have to say I understand that was part of his intention, is to kind of alienate us, that he didn't want us to sympathize with the characters. But I think that ultimately that makes it less effective. If we look at books like The Fountainhead or The Stranger, it's clear the author doesn't necessarily want us to identify with the main character, but we still have to sympathize with them, otherwise we don't get the point of the book. The thing that's hard for me is the first chapter is a bunch of dialogue that's very stilted and dull, and it's just the character talking about how everything is boring and dull. And anyone who reads past that is sort of giving the author the benefit of the doubt, in that, okay, you know what, this isn't particularly compelling, but I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, you know, eventually I'll care about these characters and what they're doing. But that doesn't happen. In fact, all that happens is that Anderson pushes us further away. When Violet is dying and she sends Titus her memories and he deletes them, that first off seems like a very weird thing to do, because it's not a passive act of non-support, it's an active act of non-support, which I think is specifically designed to make us sort of loathe and despise this character, and to kind of give up any hope that we had that he would be a redeemable person in the end. But it doesn't really fit as far as character development goes either, because you have to wonder if he's the type of person who really is just seeking the cheap thrill all the time, then why on earth would he have been in the relationship with Violet in the first place? But the thing that really bothers me is the speech at the end where Violet's in the coma and the father's just rambling, and it's challenging because we haven't ever identified with the father. He was presented in a semi-favorable light at the beginning. Every time since then, he's either a pain to Violet or he's just stern and weird and quirky and very dismissive of everyone else in the story. And when Anderson starts to make Titus into a real jerk, I think in part it's to try and prep us to be really receptive to that long-winded speech. But it doesn't work, because now all we have is a whole bunch of characters we don't care about and some pretentious windbag who's just being patronizing toward them. And ultimately what it comes off as is not any characters talking at all, but Anderson just writing this long speech about, you've ruined the world, you're ruining people, everything, because you use the internet, and it's you, not you the character, you the reader, you're a terrible person, stop texting in class. Maybe it's just me, but that's kind of what it felt like. So ultimately, I think this book failed because it made pretty much a sweeping condemnation of everything that it had introduced in the book. And that's really unfortunate, because there are some things we legitimately need to be concerned about with the internet. Things like Facebook filtering the status updates you see based on the people that you're most likely to want to see. Or like Google filtering your search results based on what you've searched for before. These are amazing tools for helping us find things we're looking for, but they're really really bad at helping us find things we're not necessarily looking for. But Anderson goes too general. He doesn't just say, look, there's this amazing tool and there's some concerns that we have with it. He takes a wide brush and says this whole feed thing is all bad. And moreover, Anderson makes the point in a very condescending speech rather than in the story. People want to read a story, not hear a lecture. So this book is not one I'd recommend. I will recommend that you read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I love 1984, but honestly, I think Brave New World is probably closer to what we'll be seeing. Next week, we're reviewing Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I am really looking forward to reviewing that, so make sure to hit subscribe so you see it. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you with Ready Player One on Sunday.